So here's a panel of 5 virologists, each and every one of them having decades of experience in virology, some of them specializing in COVID, like spiky protein viruses type of thing, genre. And all these virologists say that COVID-19 was not from a lab or gain of function or any number of other allegations that allege COVID-19 came from a lab. I recall at the start of this COVID-19 pandemic, virologists saying this virus is from the wild. It is not from a lab. And they explained biologically, scientifically, observationally why it was not from a lab. They said we can tell the difference between a lab virus and a wild virus. And on this episode, it's TWIV, TWIV. Highly recommend it if you want the real facts about COVID-19. Now, the media has been inundated with allegations that COVID-19 came from a lab in Wuhan. But if you listen carefully to the news, they're saying intelligence has determined, believes there is no actual fact or proof at all. Now, you can make the valid point that China is not free with their information. But, true enough. But according to these virologists, they don't need China to be truthful with the information. They don't need China to be as open as what we want China to be, to understand that the information they have gotten from China, because apparently there were some virus samples gathered, so on and so forth. And also don't forget that someone from China did release the actual genetic sequence of the virus shortly after it started infecting people in Wuhan. So they have the actual original strand sequence of the virus, and at that time, which was, like I said, at the start of the pandemic, the virologist said this is from the wild, and they still are of that same opinion. So it's interesting that there's these news stations like screaming to the void, it's from a lab, it's from a lab, it's from a lab, stating that with absolutely no proof. And it's like, and I remember thinking in my head, have they consulted virologists over this? Like actual virologists that work with the spiked protein and SARS-like viruses? Like, have they actually consulted these experts and asked them, here's the sequences we have since the beginning. Is this from a lab or is it from the wild? Instead, they're relying on so-called experts that are not virologists, like intelligence agencies and, I don't know, people who aren't qualified to say where the virus came from. So I find that really interesting. Anyway, I'm glad I happened to find this video, because I was wondering to myself, well, at the start of the pandemic, did the expert virologists make a mistake? Did they confuse a natural virus from the wild with something created in a lab? And it turns out that they're, to this day, still convinced, no, this virus came from the wild. It was not from a lab. Anyway, I highly recommend you watch TWIV, 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 TWIV. Expert virologists, they put out programs every week talking about viruses. So, yeah, Don't know why it's such big news. Supposed lab leak theory or gain of function or what all people are saying. Turns out it's not true. So, in conclusion, COVID-19 virus is from the wild. That's the conclusion that these several virologist experts have come to.